Okay, so this is part 2 of the Pantograph build, and I've been trying to lay out the arms on this chunk of aluminum here. And so I was trying different pivot points, and I just wasn't liking the way anything was coming out. Then it kind of occurred to me, well, this bigger bar is actually going to be positioned this way, like this. So if I just put the pivot point in the middle, say right about there, and then here's the other arm, I really only need, and this is another thing I had to kind of just answer for myself, is how much do I really need this to come together? And playing around with the wooden one here, I really don't need these to get any closer than about 10 inches at the end. Well, 6 to 10, I guess. But if I put that right here, that gives me about 6 inches, which I don't think it'll ever need to be that close. I don't want it any further away than 10, but I don't need it any closer than 6. Because keep in mind, there's going to be like a cutter like right here, and the piece I'm making right here. So I can't, it'd be pointless to get all the way in it. It can't do that. So it'll never, well, it shouldn't ever need to get closer than 6. But I don't want it to be any further away than 10. So if I just kind of split the difference and put it at 8 right there, if I put that at 8, then taking a look at this end, that lines that up right about there. Now there's another line right there because I was experimenting with it being at about 6. That's about 6 right there. So ignore that line because I don't need it to be that close. So basically that line right there is showing me, you darken it up so you can see it, that line right there is how much this one has to kind of go into that material. So basically, flipping it back over this way, that would set into the material about like that. So I would have to machine out a wedge about that big out of that end. Pivot point comes in this way. So I would have to machine out a wedge for that to go in, and that's really not that much. And maybe you can see it better like that. So basically, this right here would be machined out, leaving, that top part. Of course, that'd be rounded here, pivot point here. Leaving that, mill that out, and that would allow this bottom piece here to pivot in like that. And to help it, what I could do is about, you can see I was kind of sketching a little bit already. I could even come in like that. And that would be even less material I would have to take out here. So I don't think I need to worry about having a little dog leg and having the hinge off center. That'll make things a whole lot easier. So I can basically just cut that along here. I'll redraw the line. And this end, I can just bring this and I can just cut those out. And what I'll do is I'll cut up to the line here, and I'll save that line on this piece. And so that'll make that piece a little over 2, and this one a little less than 1.5 inches. And then that'll give me about a 1/4 inch. That'll give me about a 1/4 inch for the hinge. That should work. I need to erase all of this and redraw it neater so I don't get lost in the bandsaw. So let me clean this up, and then we'll take it over to the bandsaw and get it cut. So this is where I am so far after several minutes of just pushing that through. I'm almost halfway done. It is going a lot better than I expected, thankfully, because last night I got a brand new saw blade in the mail and ordered it from McMaster Car. It is 10 TPI and 3/4 inch wide, and it specifically said that it's for material from, I think, 3/8 to 1.5. And that is 1.5. So I'm pretty much maxing out the design spec of that blade. But it specifically said that it's made to cut straight lines in thick material. This is the straightest line I've ever cut on this machine. The saw blade that was on there, it would have been out to like here by now. But yeah, that's here I thought it was just a problem with the bandsaw or myself not being able to cut a straight line, and all it was the blade. So you put the right blade on and you can cut a fairly straight line. So I'm actually very happy with that. I've got, I don't know, maybe 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes to get through the rest of that. So let me finish cutting that and I'll get back with you. So I was kind of curious how long the whole cut took. So I timed the last half of it, approximately half, and it was actually less than 15 minutes. It was like 12, 13 minutes. So the whole thing took maybe 25 minutes, give or take. It seemed a lot longer than that, but it really didn't take that long. It wasn't that bad. And I'm very happy with how straight it is. I'm sure some of you could have done better, but I'm pleased with that. Nice cut. Surface finish here. I mean, obviously it's you know, not a machine surface or anything, but that's the next step, is to take this into the mill and fly cut the whole surface flat, and do that to both of those surfaces, and then we can get some measurements and see where we land here. And once we know exactly those dimensions, I can start making the pieces for the main pivot and that mount. And I made a quick sketch of what that would look like. That part right there is what will clamp onto the main bar, the main post. So of course that goes around here, slit with some bolts to clamp it in place. That way I can loosen it up, slide it up or down, clamp it in place. And I'll use 2 bolts like that. So I got those 2 bolts. One is probably plenty, but you know, I'll use 2 just because. And then here will be the part where it can lift up and down. And so that part goes into here, and then that part would be the swivel, you know, back and forth. So that'll allow me to swivel it and tilt it from that main post. And I might make it a little bit beefier. I don't know. Like I said, these are just rough sketches, but those parts are going to come out of this chunk right there. So we've got that square for this one, and then that one for that piece there. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut out those 2 blanks here while I've got the bandsaw plugged in and warmed up, and then I'll put these pieces in the mill and fly cut those edges. Okay, and there's those pieces, and I just want to point out, when I first sketched that up, I realized I made it a little bit too tight here. That's why I just put in add 10 millimeters. So that is a little longer than that sketch, but this is for that piece, and then this one is for that piece. Again, bigger than I drew, but those will fit, you know, that'll go in here, and that'll allow me to tilt, and then it'll pivot about there. Anyways, you get the idea. So anyways, those are all rough cut out. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how to get these in the mill and flatten that cut edge. So let me get that set up, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so here's my setup for milling that. Again, it's way longer than what I really can do. So I got some 1, 2, 3 blocks supporting it better, clamped here in the middle, and got a fly cutter put in here. And I thought I was taking some shallow cuts, but apparently I tried to take too much, and it hit there. And take a look at what happened. Yeah, I broke that gear right there. And I don't have a third hand to point to it, but hopefully you can see that broken gear right there. And I thought I had ordered a spare one, a replacement one, but apparently not so much. So now this project is on hold until I get a new gear in. I'll probably order like 3 or 4 of them. They do sell a belt conversion kit for this. Maybe I'll look into that belt conversion kit. I don't know. I think it's like 150 bucks, which is more than I want to spend for that. The new gear is about 12, I think. So I don't know. So I got to get that fixed, and then we can get back to machining this. And I don't know why, but I hate fly cutting. I might just put an end mill in it, maybe like a 1/2 inch end mill. I think that might work better. But anyways, the plan is to go down about 7 inches, and then shift it, and then do another 7 inches, and then shift it, and then keep going until the whole thing is done. So, I don't know. Now it's going to be a few more days, so I'll get back to you once I'm ready to continue. Okay, so I got the new gear for the milling machine, and I swapped out the fly cutter for just an end mill, and I was able to get it in like 2 passes on the end mill, except for here. I did 3 along here. But anyways, my milling machine only has about 8.5 to 9 inches of left to right travel along the y-axis. And of course, this thing is 26 inches long, so I had to do it in 3 sections. So, you know, I would do this much of it down and back over. Then I would have to shift the whole thing over, do the middle section, and then do that again for here. But anyways, I've got this one. And I got the ends squared up, so I've got all of the bandsaw cuts done. There's the other one. This is the smaller arm. So again, just to kind of show the plan here, this is the first main arm that will pivot about the anchor point here from these 2 blocks, which I also got these 2 blocks squared up. And when I say squared up, I just mean the saw cuts removed. And I'm sure it's not properly squared. I mean, I didn't touch these surfaces. I only did 3 of the surfaces there. So anyways, this one will pivot on that end here at some point, hopefully. And so the next thing that I want to do is I want to start with this piece to make this. This is the one that goes over the main anchor shaft. That'll be locked in with a couple of bolts, so I can raise it up or down here to get whatever height I want. And then it will pivot up or down from this point, and then left or right from this block. So that's that block, and this is the blank for that piece. So I want to get these 2 pieces done now, starting with, again, this one. So first thing I need to do is put that hole in it for that. Okay, so here's what it's looking like so far. I started with a center drill and then drill bits. The largest drill bit I have that'll fit in this machine was 1/2 inch. So I took it to 1/2 inch, and then I started opening it up with the boring head here. And I'm taking about 40 thousandths off at a time, and I could probably go more, but I started with just about 10 thou at a time. And that was handling okay. Then I went to 20 and then 30. Now I'm taking 40. And I don't think I should push it any more than that. But basically, when you look at the numbers here, you know, it tells you how much per division here. So when I turn that, so when I go from the 20 to the 30, that's going to be 10 thou off of one side, but you got to double that to the other side, so that's 20 thou off the diameter. So if I go to 20 to 40, then that'll take 40 thou off the diameter. And again, that's about as much as I want to do for now. This is shaken quite a lot, so I don't want to push it too much. I'm already sticking out a little bit here. When I first started, that was almost flush. So I don't want to stick that out too much more. But right now, that hole is right at about 1 inch. And I'm just using these to measure that, and then some calipers. So I'm right at about 1 inch. The black line there is approximately what I need. I need 1.31, and that'll be what I want here. So I've got a little bit more to go. And I've also noticed that if I put a little WD-40 on it, that helps. Without the WD-40, I'll get a little bit of aluminum kind of bond onto the tip of that I'll have to dress off. So the WD-40 helps with that. And I'm only running at about 350 to 400 RPM. It's starting to get a little out of balance. So that's about where I'm running it. And the tip of that's nice and clean still. So yeah, without the WD-40, there would have been a little burr kind of bonded onto that. So now I'm just a little over 1 inch, and as you can see, I still got quite a ways to go. So I'm not going to make you watch me take it to full size. I'll just come back once it's there, and then we'll look at the next step. Okay, so here's what it's looking like so far. There's the hole that I just finished, and of course that goes on that shaft right there. It does fit one-handed. There you go. So that goes like that. It's a pretty good fit, pretty decent fit, I think. I need to cut out here for that piece to go in, and I'll need to drill for a pivot. But I think the next thing I want to do is go ahead. I marked out here, not that line, but right there, there's a center point, and right there for these two bolts to go through, and then I will need to split it right here, so when I tighten the two bolts down, that will squeeze and grab the bar. I was playing around with trying to make it look a little less blocky. I don't know if I'll do that or not. I don't know if I'm liking that. I'll definitely round or chamfer the corners. I might just leave it square. I mean, who cares if it's got a few or a little bit more mass to it. I think that'll be fine. So anyways, I'm going to put it back in the mill, drill and tap holes, take it to the bandsaw, cut that, and then cut that out to fit that. And I'll come back and show you when that's done. Okay, here's what that's looking like so far, and I've got the holes for the bolts, and like we said, we have two of these bolts that go in here, and right now this is way too thick and chunky for these two bolts to squeeze that down enough to lock onto the shaft here. I tried it obviously, and I was cranking on these bolts way harder than I wanted to, and it was just barely starting to grab. So it's just way too thick in here. What I will probably have to do, more than likely, is I'm thinking I'll drill a hole right about here, maybe like 1/8, maybe 1/8, a little bit bigger than 1/8, and then bandsaw cut here. I think that'll help. Also, I countersunk those ends. You can see how far down I countersunk that. And I had to open up that end a little bit. You can see the threads down in there. Because in order to thread this, I had to get like the shank of the tap to go down into there in order for the end of the tap to get all the way to there. So I had to drill that out a little bit to make clearance for the tap, which is fine because when these bolts are in here, they're setting in here about like that. So that much right here is not even used anyways. So that's all just excess material. Same thing with this much material here for the counterbore for the head. That's all excess material. So what I will also more than likely do is come in here and maybe just kind of do something like that. Same thing here. And just kind of thin those sides up a little bit. So let me get this set up in the mill, and we'll come back and show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Okay, here's where this is at so far, using my longest end mill. I just went around until that opened up. This is my measurement that I used for the plus or minus back and forth. This way, I just went to the line. That's not as critical, but this dimension here is now pretty much a really nice, perfect fit for this part to pivot on. Once that's deburred and sanded, that'll be just a really nice, perfect fit. The next thing I need to do is tip this up about a 45-degree angle, and I need to take that corner off right here, and that will give this, because that's, remember, that's going to set in here like that. That's going to give that room to then tip back. So yeah, I need to chamfer out probably about a 45-degree angle. Probably about halfway from here to the hole, maybe like right there where I drew that hole. So yeah, let me get this tipped up and we'll get that milled out, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, here's what these parts are looking like so far. I don't remember what I showed you last, but I cut those down, milled that flat on those sides, got the hole in the line there. That makes it clamp down much more tighter, and this is working very well now. Here's the other part, and so this part slides in here, and then the shaft goes through the hole that way. And as far as the shafts go, this is the cross shaft. I'll explain that flatten hole here in a moment. But if we put this in here and then put the shaft in, I'm not going to shove it in all the way because it gets a little bit tight and I want to be able to take it out easily. But that's how that sets now. And of course, this can pivot up and down. That will give me the elevation for the 3D part of the pantograph. It gets a little tight when it leans back. So I'm going to have to do some work in here. So obviously this is pivoting with aluminum on a brass pivot, and it slides in here so perfect. There's aluminum on the edges here. And I'm fully aware that aluminum on an aluminum is not a good bearing surface, and aluminum on brass is probably not that much better. My original thought, my original plan, was to use bronze bushings, something like this. This is an old used one that I found. To use bronze bushings in here with the shoulder, and that way I'd have bronze on bronze shoulders. But I don't have enough to use up existing stock. I would have to order a bunch of this, and that would get real expensive real quick. Adding up everything I would need to use bronze bushings and sleeves and pivot pins and all that kind of stuff, I was looking at, I don't know, close to like 80 to $100 just in bushings for all of the pivot points, for everything I would need. And I'm thinking that's a lot of money for something that I don't even know if it's going to work yet. Now, again, having aluminum on aluminum isn't the best, but when this is under use, it's only going to be moving like that. Very slight, very slow. There's not going to be a lot of load on this. Same thing with this one here. This is the other shaft. This shaft comes down here, so the main arm will pivot this way. So this is the main arm. That's this one right here. This one goes in like that. Obviously, I got to drill a hole still. So when this is in use, this is only going to be moving about that much. Well, you know, give or take. Depends on the part that I'm doing. So the point is, it's only moving a little bit, probably less than a 90-degree sweep. And this is only going to be moving probably less than a 45-degree sweep. And there's not, honestly, there's not going to be that much of a load on it. I honestly believe that what I did here with the pivots and the aluminum, just brass and aluminum, is going to be perfectly fine for what this is going to do. Now, if I'm wrong, and if it does start to gall up or fret or bind together, then I have plenty of material to bore that out bigger and then get some bronze bushings to put in there where I'm having the problems. But just to test it to see if the thing even works or not, this should be perfectly fine. Because keep in mind, I still don't know how well this thing is even going to work when it's done. So I'm trying to do it right now. I'm trying to keep it as simple and as affordable as possible, and then see how well it works. And then if it does work, but certain things are causing problems, then go back and fix those issues that are causing problems. Now, let me show you something here real quick. The way these pivots are going to be. Remember that flat in the hole? Well, I drilled and tapped that end for a 1032. So that's going to come together like this. So, and also notice that hole here. So basically what happens is when these go together, those are going to get screwed together like that, locked together in here. But that will lock those two pivots together, and I will more than likely drill and tap a hole here to lock that pivot in with a set screw at the top here. So these will be locked together inside of here, and of course pivoting on those two ends here, and then the main bar will pivot on this shaft here. And I'm thinking that makes sense. That's the plan for that. Now, just yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't remember, I ordered some oiling cups. They're like the little ball valve oiling cups. So basically what you do is you drill a hole and press them in, and then you can like force oil in it down to all the pivots. So I got about 20 of those little oil cups for like, I don't know, 10 or 12 bucks on eBay. I should get those maybe next week. So I do plan on having oiling points on all of this stuff. And these two parts here are kind of done. I need to do a little bit more like fit and finish on them. Because again, like I said, that gets tight when it gets back here. So I'm going to have to file into here. I was really tight on the machining. I was really tight on my tolerances for this stuff. Because again, I don't want any movement back and forth here. And right now there's none. But it's a little bit too tight. So that's just a little bit of fit and finish. Also, I'm going to have to round the corner here. I might here, I don't really have to, but I might round it there, but I'm going to have to round it there because again, when that pivots down, you can see here that corner sticking up is going to interfere with the main bar. So I'm going to have to round that off so that bar clears when it's pivoted down. Now when it's pivoted up, I got the opposite problem right back in there. So either I need to cut in here, something like that, or on this bar, just round off that corner here, which is probably what I'll do because I'm afraid if I did that, it would weaken that a little bit. So I'll probably more than likely just round off the corner here so that it doesn't interfere here when that's angled back. I think that'd be the easiest solution. And again, this is fairly snug fit in here, so I'm going to have to file and sand that till that fits a little bit better. But that kind of gives you the idea of what I'm going for here. So this is these pieces almost done. Again, that's a tight fit in here. But that kind of gives you the idea of what I'm going for. And of course, that goes here, and those bolts will lock that in place so I can adjust the height of the whole thing. This still needs to be mounted to a table of some sort. I'll probably get some steel, I don't know, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch steel plate. And it'll probably be as big as this work table here. And that'll get, mounted to the bottom left corner. And so this is where I'm at so far. But I really need to get back on the Nimitz build. I've been slacking off on that way too much. So I think I need to just put this aside for now, call this video done for now. If you have any questions or suggestions or any other comments, feel free. You know where to put them. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.